Welcome to the Great Awakening Ministry. I am Minister and Yogini Joanne Lee, and on this week's show, we have Carole J. Obley. Carole is the author of Embracing the Ties That Bind, I'm Still With You, and Soul-to-Soul Connections. She has communicated with souls who have crossed into the spiritual world through thousands of private and group sessions. She has earned a reputation in her geographical area as the real deal amongst psychic mediums. She travels nationally to speak and teach workshops, as well as maintaining a practice in mediumship based near Pittsburgh, PA. Her new book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, gives teachings on love, forgiveness, purpose, and finding peace from her case files of thousands of mediumship sessions. This book helps us to explore, enhance, and expand our consciousness through exercises which feature tips to raise the vibration of our thoughts, mindful meditations to instill peace, and resources to fortify and expand our spiritual awareness. This book is a compelling testament to the fortitude and brilliance of our own soul.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Carole, welcome to the Great Awakening show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I love your accent.
Well, we're in dreary old cold London at the moment. So where are you?
I'm obviously in USA. I'm in Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh.
Beautiful. Wow. We love America. Okay. This is such an amazing, we're going to get on to your beautiful book, Wisdom from the Spirit World. And I have so many amazing questions for you because this is such an important subject. And it's so good that we give this to the people. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thank you for writing all your books. Thank you so much. So, Carole, please tell us a little bit about what mediumship is and what brought you to the path of being a medium.
Well, a medium is an individual who's sensitive to the spirit world. And usually genuine mediums have been born that way. But they also take training. And I've been at this for 30 years.
Wow.
So over the years, I mean, I was born with a sensitivity, but over the years, I've also taken a lot of training in order to hone those skills, to really develop them and refine them. And I kind of stumbled onto the path. It was, the universe has ways of making sure that we're meeting our calling. So it was, in my case, it was sort of catastrophic. It was a fire. And the fire burned the business that I was working in. And so I was left directionless for almost a year. And I got a phone call from a friend who said, you need to go to this metaphysical center in this small town near where I live. And so I put that off, and then she called again, and I said, I think this is something I need to do. So everything sort of started from there as far as my opening. And actually, I started with spiritual healing, hands-on healing. And I was highly trained in that. That is part of spiritualism, the transmission of, the divine energy through the practitioner. So I took a lot of training with that, and then began, the journey of mediumship, I think a couple of years later, and attended intensive training.
Wow. But did you always know from young that you didn't know that? Wow.
No, In fact, well, that's part of the story too. Briefly, I got into a lot of trouble with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, I've written very openly about this, and really, that has served me well to help other people who have had addiction, and particularly with mediumship, have had alcoholism in the family and those sorts of very destructive patterns. So in that way, my early experiences with being out of it, being self-obsessed, self-consumed, and really not liking who I was,
Mm.
um, served me well in my journey of helping others.
Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. Wow. And I mean, it's, I believe that we're in a very pivotal time on earth. I believe that we are going through a great awakening, and so many people are waking up to their gifts, their own gifts, and it's a time of like spiritual, that I think is becoming the spirit world, and our world is becoming a lot more accessible now. I think people are waking up to that there is something else other than this world, so, but your book is
Yeah,
so fascinating. How do souls in the spirit communicate during your sessions? And what type of information do they impart? Because I know you've done so many sessions. So what is the communication that they say?
yes. It's through a process of blending, and because we are all souls. We are, that's who we are, besides having this disposable physical body. We are eternal souls. And what happens during the process of mediumship is a blending of the spirit person or communicator, that soul in the spirit world that is not here in the physical plane, blends with my soul. So it's this blending of the two souls. And then I impart that information that I receive, that I'm aware of, to the recipient of the reading. And that's really how it works. And it's also through these senses called the inner senses. Most people have heard of clairvoyance, which is seeing. There's also clairaudience, which means listening or hearing. And then there's clairsentience, which is um, feeling emotions, or just this sort of sensing of that person's life,
Wow.
when they were here on the physical plane. And also importantly, the core of the reading, which is the message that that soul wants to pass along to the recipient.
That is it's amazing, isn't it? And do they always have a message for the recipient? It's beautiful. I mean, it's
Yes.
so healing, isn't it? It's really is. What is the number one message do you feel from the spiritual world?
Actually sounds kind of strange, but I would say that the most common message in, at this point, I'm over 14,000 readings. Um, there is an afterlife. I go on. That's the most common message. Don't talk about me as if I'm not alive, because I am. And so it seems very simple. But I would say that that is probably, and in Wisdom from the Spirit World, I list that as the first lesson, because it is the most common. And the soul is eternal. And that is really also, I think, an often overlooked facet of mediumship, is that it not only is a communication from that soul in the spirit world that they go on, it's also a reminder to that recipient of the communication that they are an eternal soul, that there's nothing to fear, that, we are one grain of sand on this lifetime was one grain of sand on the beach of the eternity of the soul. And that can be very healing for people. It can alleviate fear of death.
Yes.
It can alleviate fear that, my loved one is gone. They're not connected to me anymore. And certainly, I mean, people have to grieve the loss of the physical.
Mm.
That is necessary, because obviously we can't hug that person anymore. We can't pick up a phone and call them. They're not
Mm.
there physically,
Mm. Mm.
but soul is
Mm.
always, the bond of love is always there, and it is unbreakable through death.
Yes. And that's what I totally believe, that, as yogini, we believe in reincarnation and the spirit, the God's heaven, spiritual world. But do you, like, I always really feel that when your loved one passes over, and when your time is to pass over, they will come around and they will help you, with their arms stretched open, and help you to let go of this physical body and go, come on, take the leap, into the most beautiful, celestial, melodious, blissful place that we could ever imagine. Is that correct? Do they come around? Are they around us all the time? Are they our spirit guides?
That's true. Now, I do want to just add a point with that, because sometimes people think, well, are they watching me, in the shower, or, you know, are they aware of my private times or whatever? And the answer to that is no, because, another point that's really important that people have to understand: the personality dissolves when we go to the spirit world. The personality and the ego are necessary here on the physical plane, but they're not necessary in the spirit world, because it's sort of, we shed that. We shed that identity. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not responsible for what we did here, because most definitely we are. And, this thing called karma, or the natural law of cause and effect, is always operating. And so, people will often say, does my mom or my dad or my husband, or wife, do they still feel this way, or are they still a bad person, maybe? And the answer to that is, there's an elevated perspective. So it's a much different perspective from the soul's vantage point than the personalities, because the personality is relatively limited, and it sees and experiences duality. And this physical plane is a plane of duality. And, in the spirit world, it's not like that. So there's always a more elevated perspective. And that's really what I wanted to capture in Wisdom from the Spirit World. The repeating themes that I kept hearing over and over throughout multiple readings. And they're more spiritually oriented lessons that the spirit world will communicate.
Yeah. To help people on earth, to help us understand how to live, how to die, to not be scared, because that's the biggest thing, isn't it? It's so important I think, to not have that to not have that fear of death, because then you can truly live. Because so many people live in fear of life, because, it's a big fear, isn't it? Mm.
Beautifully stated. There are many, many people who wall themselves off due to grief, particularly since we're talking about, the spirit world. we can wall ourselves off in other ways too, with anger, with fear. Um, with grief, people can build a very thick wall around themselves and, feel very defeated and actually stop living. And those in spirit deliver compelling messages saying, stop that. I'm still here with you. In fact, my second book that I wrote is called I'm Still With You.
Oh,
So,
beautiful.
the people need to know
Yes,
that we still have life here. A loved one's passing is not a reason to shut down.
yes,
That doesn't mean that we can't feel the feelings. We need to go through the stages of grieving, but to not allow that to stop our life.
yes.
And there are many people that I've read for, particularly those who have lost children.
Mm,
Uh, it's heart-wrenching for
yes.
people. I don't believe they're ever the same again.
No.
Um, but, particularly in my second book, I'm Still With You, I emphasized there's a whole chapter called Forever Young, and it's
Oh,
on people who have lost kids. And so these courageous souls use something very tragic to as a spiritually oriented springboard to open up more spiritually and to reach out and help others who are walking that same pathway.
but you know what you give them? You give them such beautiful, it's not even hope, such beautiful knowing that when they pass over, they will meet them again. Because love never dies. And the soul continues on. Our consciousness never dies. It continues on. And all of our loved ones that have passed over, we shall meet again.
I think you're a medium because you are so well spoken on that is really the core. What you just said about the continuation of love. Um, the whole first section of Wisdom from the Spirit World, it's called You Signed Up for This. So,
Wow.
and it's about these things called the Akashic Files. Um, and so, we it's hard to conceive sometimes, but what I have seen through my work and everything I write about and speak about in interviews is from my direct experience.
Yeah.
The Akashic Files are the book of life of that soul, and every experience that that soul has had is contained within those files. So we choose certain things and certain experiences.
Yeah.
And the loss of a child, believe it or not, can be one of those things
Yeah.
that we choose for spiritual evolution.
Yeah. But one of the hardest. But yeah. Wow. Amazing.
Definitely one of the hardest.
Yeah. I couldn't. Yeah.
Having the knowledge that we're going to be directly, pardon me, directly with that soul again, really
com-
lends, a lot of comfort to
comfort.
people.
So important for them to know that. So important, you know, and that they're not alone, and they that love that they will be. That's just beautiful. Oh, lovely. And Carol, what do you mean? What is evidential mediumship? Is it inborn or learned? What does that mean?
Evidentiary mediumship is presenting facts about the spirit communicator's life. I got your dad here. He was a carpenter. I have mom here. She was a baker. Um, and other um, compelling facets of that soul's life, memories, the description of the personality, numbers that or dates, that are associated with that individual, their birth date, their passing date. Um, And, so it can take what they passed from is another big one. So it's really about presenting facts that I, as a medium, would have absolutely no way of knowing.
Yeah, that's right.
Some of them are quite uh, specific.
Mm,
Um, and, I am constantly refining my ability to sense what the spirit world is communicating. Not so that I can become this great medium, but for the purpose of really demonstrating the knowledge of that soul, because it's a living, breathing intelligence that's actually more alive than we are here.
yes, that's what I believe, Carol. Yeah. Our soul is in the spiritual, akashic, astral cause, heavenly realms with, as a part of the oneness with God, Goddess the whole time. And then it projects a part of itself into this duality, which comes into this body, into this physical body. So basically we are there all the time. And that is our true home. Is it not?
As I said, you could be a medium. You know a lot about the process. Um, yes. And when the soul takes physical form and incarnation in the body of that tiny infant, there is prior incarnations. They're stored in those akashic files. And sometimes, that soul really has to, sometimes souls choose to experience some very dire circumstances early in life. They may have come into a family that in some way is abusive, um, for purposes of evolution. The only reason we're here is to evolve spiritually.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
We get lost. It's almost, the longer I'm here on the planet, I am convinced that this is like being under the influence of a drug.
Yeah, it is. And you know what the
Here,
yogis and the rishis call it? It's
but
Maya,
yeah,
the matrix, which is the temptation, which is the force, physicality with all of its consumerism. And it takes you off into the trance. And then you have to awaken yourself to the truth.
yes. One of the things that my spirit team, those are the souls who help me with my, I call them a spirit team because we work together.
Wow.
They are not superior, just so the audience understands. The spirit guides are not superior to you.
No.
They are helping souls. That's who they are. And they told me a long time ago, they said, physical life is much like waking up from in the morning and you had a dream. And when you were in the dream, it was very real. And I think most of us have had this experience that, you wake up and you go, wow, I actually felt that, and you still have the emotions, or you might have a taste in your mouth, or, a smell. That's how physical life is when we go into the spirit world. So we have a memory of it. The soul accumulates knowledge. And so, we don't forget any of that. It's stored in these files, but it becomes sort of unreal to us as a soul when we transition back into the spirit world. So I thought it was a really good metaphor that my spirit team gave me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it can really, this is how mediumship, what we was talking about before, that's how people can heal by knowing that life goes on. This is the most important thing, that life goes on, that we are a soul. We are not this physical body. We are having an experience. And the reason is to evolve here, to awaken and evolve. And I think and that's how mediumship can heal people. Yes.
Yeah, and it eliminates a lot of fear. This plane is really a fear-based
Fear-based.
environment.
Yes, it is.
I think most of us right now are aware of the tremendous transformation that humanity is going through at this time. I
Wow.
mean, collective consciousness, um, I've studied astrology for many, many, many years,
Mm,
and are the life force, which is represented by the planet Pluto,
mm.
represents the collective life on the planet, has shifted out of the sign of Capricorn, where it was since 2008. It's now shifted just recently in the last month into Aquarius.
Wonderful.
And so there's a big difference between those two energies. Capricorn being very much concerned with structure, the way things have always been, the status quo. Aquarius contrasting, much more concerned with updating everything, the
Yes.
future and the collective good.
Yeah. I
And
can feel
so
it.
a lot
Mm,
of people, I mean, collectively,
mm,
humanity is going through this
mm.
um, currently.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of fear that comes up when the old structures have crumbled, which was Pluto, its evolutionary purpose is to unearth or bring up impurities,
Yes. The darkness. Bring up the darkness to the light.
the shadow, the darkness. And Aquarius says, okay, we've dug all of that up and we've purified. Now we're going to really look at and refine our collective consciousness. Aquarius is a very strong fixed air sign. So it does deal also with mental capacity because thoughts are associated with the element of air.
Mm,
So getting rid of old belief systems,
mm.
really looking at how we can improve the quality of life for
Yes.
all of us.
Yeah. This is the new earth that's being unearthed, really. All them old structures and ways that don't serve humanity anymore will collapse and fade away. And the new will come, and this is why this is a great awakening. We're learning, people are awakening and learning about their gifts, their spiritual gifts. It's a wonderful time to be alive. It's amazing to see this at this time.
Yeah, I think use spiritual tools to transcend fear. I am a believer in, I mean, I have practiced mindfulness for a long time. Mindfulness simply being in the moment, recognizing that that's all we have.
Yes.
I don't care who the individual is. It could be, the president, it could be a beggar on the street, that we're all the same in that way, that we only have right now.
That's
That's all
it.
we have. And, being in the moment, that automatically reduces fear because fear is usually connected with feeling unsafe. And so that's sort of future oriented.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, they bond in the past, they bond to their wounds. And
That's
by the
right.
way, that's another lesson in wisdom from the spirit world is our wounds do not diminish the light within. And
Well,
so,
yeah. Rumi, the poet, he said the wound is where the light enters. Love
yes,
that.
yeah, I love Rumi.
Oh, it's
In fact,
amazing.
some of his quotes in the books that I've written.
Oh,
Um,
lovely. Beautiful. And in your book, I love the title of this book. It's amazing. Death, a Beginning. Wow. In your book, Death, a Beginning, you write about what the soul experiences after death. Can you give a short synopsis of this? Because this is
yeah,
fascinating.
by the way, that is chapter 2 in I'm Still With You, True
Oh,
Stories of Healing Grief Through Spirit Communication. It's in that chapter, it's all about the journey of the soul when it leaves physical life. And from rising above the physical body, the consciousness rising above the physical body, and then the journey, being greeted by loved ones, as you so beautifully stated earlier, and what we do from there. Taking assessment of the life that we just left, sitting with our spirit team and saying, how did I do on the lesson of compassion? Well, I'm going to give myself a C on that. I think I might need some more experience with that. How did I do, with nurturing, being able to nurture others or to use my abilities as a healer? And so we do this self-assessment, and there's no deception there in the spirit world. So it's an honest assessment taken by the soul itself.
Self.
You know,
Yeah, that's amazing.
it is truly, you've heard about the life review
Life
process.
review.
And we do go through that. And it's very quick. We might have been here for 99 years if we live a long life, but that life review happens in a matter of seconds.
Wow.
And from that point, then, with our spirit team, we can gauge or start to, I'm putting it in quotes, plan how we're going to continue. Do we need more experience with these things in the spirit world? Because growth never stops. It's endless. It's endless. And to me, I find that quite comforting to know that no matter what happens here, that I'm going to go on. And, by grounding that knowledge within myself, I hope that that is passed along in the sessions that I do as well.
Beautiful,
That whole
beautiful.
chapter talks about from leaving one physical life to entering, the next one.
Yeah.
And I find that people, can really gain some comfort and understanding, and also to know that we're responsible for
Yeah.
everything that we do.
That's right.
There's no
Everything is self-created, isn't it, Carole? Self-created
100%.
for us to learn our lessons. Everything, because we think that that person or that situation or that, they did that to me. No, every single thing is self-created. So therefore, we can begin again in the now and create, our life anew.
That is also comforting. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because one always has the gift of choice. That's another lesson in wisdom from the spirit world, is our choices determine the quality of our life. And instead of engaging in blame or the very dangerous entity of victimhood, there really is no victimhood. I know some people might disagree and say, well, children who are abused, aren't they victims? And so in a sense, yes, if we're looking at it through the eyes of the personality, certainly I'm not in any way saying that the soul that the person consciously chose that. But yet there's the availability within very terrible experiences
For the soul to learn. Yeah.
evolve, and also to be a beacon for others.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen that? That a person has endured horrendous life conditions or experiences, but they're like the phoenix rising from the ashes, that they transcend that, and then they become an inspiration to others. That's really the name of the game. That's how it works.
It's just amazing. It really is. It really is. And describe how you feel or hear the spirits. Do you see them all the time, or how do you, turn that ability? How do you turn that ability off and on? And is there? Is there? I know there's good spirits and bad spirits. Talk a little bit about that after as well.
Basically what I do, it comes down to one thing, and that's why I said basically, because I don't like that word, but it is basic in that it's sensing. And so that is clairsentience. And so whenever I sit down with somebody to do a session, what focuses that in for me is a prayer. I always pray before the session. It's just a short prayer, but that's my signal and the spirit world signal that that opening is happening. Um, now, do I turn it off? Absolutely. Anyone who is a legitimate medium must turn it off.
Mm.
Otherwise, you're going to be inundated with things all the time. So, and there, on the contrary, though, there are many times prior to a session, or when I'm going to sleep at night, I have headsets on, I'm doing meditation, that connection happens prior to the session. And I have no idea, who it is. I'll see somebody or, I'll start to get a message and I have no clue who that is. And then I later discover that. That's not all the time though. But it does happen. And in a very specific way. Sometimes, there are times I have, before I've done a group, because I do group mediumship, I will sit with a piece of paper and a pen and sit there and I'll say, a loved one that's connected to somebody who's going to be in this group, can you connect with me now and give me some information? And I will sit there and write down very specific details of that spirit person. And I take the paper with me when I go to the group. Now, I do not do that all the time, but maybe that's a reminder that I need to do that again, because it's quite startling
Wow.
when that happens. And, it's not just a vague detail like, well, somebody's mom came to me, but the circumstances or the characteristics of that mom's passing or, things that are associated with her.
It's beautiful. And what are the various ways spirit in our loved ones send us signs? Because that is, I mean, you always hear about, in nature, the robin or the butterfly, the feathers. Please tell us.
Yeah, again, in my second book, I'm Still With You, there's a whole chapter. I think it's called, that book is from '08, Spirit Speaks. There are many different categories. What you mentioned, nature, and this is what's called synchronicity, which means a meaningful coincidence. Say that I'm really down, I lost my husband, and I am asking him for a sign. And I'm sitting out on my porch, and in flies a butterfly, and it lands on my lap. That would be an example of synchronicity. I'm thinking about him, and then the butterfly comes. Spirit can manipulate electricity, flashing lights, ringing the phone. Um, you know, they can create synchronicity through numbers,
Yes.
repeating numbers, or numbers that are associated with them. Dream visitations. That's where there's an actual connection between souls. And it feels, I had one of these and I will never forget it. In my third book, Soul to Soul Connections, I wrote about it. It was with my grandmother, who passed in 1977. And about 20 years later, she came to me, and I will never ever forget that. So it feels as if the person is there with you, and it's an overwhelming sense of love. The love that I felt from my grandmother in that connection, there is nothing here on this earth that I have ever experienced to that magnitude. And it was the most encompassing, reassuring, feeling.
Uh,
And I liken it to, it must be what happens when we die.
yeah.
We are
It's
welcomed
almost,
back
yeah.
to
It's almost
light.
like you had a little touch of heaven come to you, you know. Oh, it makes me so emotional. It's beautiful, Carole.
Yes, if you've ever had one of these, you will not forget it. And it's their way of saying, I'm here with you. I go on, and I'm giving you this unconditional love.
Just beautiful. I just wish all people could experience that. But that's what I feel. This great awakening, is refining us, and more as we go through the future of humanity. Who knows where? But I feel that the body, the physical body, will get lighter and lighter and lighter and become the spiritual energy body. And I really believe, you know, I mean, in the Celestian prophecy, they say that's when heaven and physical world and heaven come together as one, like that. That's just so wow, isn't it? you know.
And that brings up another interesting point, and I've written about this in all of my books. Many times, the soul, the spirit who's leaving that body, will look down on the body and say, "Hmm, what am I doing down there when I'm up here?" This is particularly common. We in the U.S. We've had a lot of we have an opioid pardon me crisis, and so there's been a lot of overdoses, and unfortunately or fortunately, I've read for a lot of people who have lost children to that, or a brother or sister or a spouse to an opioid overdose.
Mm.
And so, because that wasn't the intent of the soul, many times they will come through and they'll say that wasn't on purpose. And I watched when the paramedics came and tried to revive me, or that you came into my bedroom and found me, or whatever.
Wow.
So there's this sort of reflection that can take place with the soul. And the other thing too is that the soul usually attends its own wake or funeral. And
Amazing.
and the reason I'm saying that is because there have been sessions in which the soul will mention, what happened at that funeral, or what was in the casket, um, what, you know, specific things. So I think it's kind of cool, actually, that the
I think
soul
it's
will go.
amazing. Absolutely beautiful,
Yeah.
really. Wow.
And they'll even sometimes talk about, I loved these specific songs that you picked out, at my funeral. They were my favorite songs. Or, I saw that you laid a rose in my casket, or, a piece of jewelry or whatever.
That is just so beautiful. That, and that must feel so comforting as well. Wow. Wow. Absolutely beautiful. And in Wisdom from the Spirit World, you write about forgiveness. What role does this play in our spiritual awareness and in the grieving journey? Forgiveness is such a big one, isn't it?
It is. And I write extensively in Wisdom from the Spirit World about that. And in my prior books, I have as well. It is the cornerstone of healing. Why? Because it doesn't necessarily, in a spiritual sense, spiritually speaking, forgiveness doesn't really mean that, well, this person really betrayed me. And so, well, I'm just going to let that go. And, I don't have any more feelings about it. Or I had a horrible childhood. I forgive my parents, magically. So it means that we need to walk through those feelings, the shadow part of us, but understandable feelings if we've been betrayed or abused. or we've suffered trauma. What it really means is that once we go over those feelings, that we make a conscious decision to not carry them anymore. So, and it doesn't mean that, oh, well, I'm going to have, my abusive father back in my life, or, whoever it might be. That it doesn't mean that. It means that we make a decision so that we are no longer carrying that burden. We are no longer hindered by heavy weight,
Yes.
that
The
is
resentment.
going.
We set ourselves free. We set
Yes,
ourselves free. Forgiving ourselves is really important as well. For all the mistakes that we made, you've got to bless it all and let it all go, and forgiveness sets us free. It doesn't set the other person free.
absolutely. I believe that there is a shift energetically in some way with that person. And importantly, too, if that was a karmic situation, meaning that it was set up before the two souls came here, or three, or a group of souls, that it dissolves some of that karma. You see, that's the really important part. That the liberation that occurs can really affect that whole group. And I might add, ancestors.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. The ancestral lineage karma. If we don't do the work on ourselves and evolve and awaken ourselves, then we can pass that down to our children, and it goes on, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, people really, and I've seen that in operation. I've seen, people say that they had an alcoholic, father, and the father was present physically, but he really wasn't there, for the children. And then, the recipient of the reading will say, well, sometimes the spirit person will say, I'm worried about the younger male that's here, and it's that recipient's son, and he's also drinking and going down that same pathway. So, it really, and from that vantage point of the spirit world, that soul is saying, I ruined my life. I made very poor choices. This needs to be addressed. My grandson, your son, he needs to get into recovery.
Yeah. And that's where
You know,
that's where the spirit, soul can help the living by saying, don't make the same mistakes, as I made, and they give them the will to live and make a good life. They can turn it around.
very important point, because you had asked earlier, is there always a message? There is, or otherwise the blending would not occur. It's sort of like, the analogy is, do you pick up a phone, or do you email or text somebody for no reason? I mean, yeah, it might be just to say, hey, I'm thinking about you, or hello, or how are you feeling? That's still a reason. So there's always a need on the behalf of the spirit communicator. And the need can be anywhere from, I want you to know that I go on, that there is an afterlife, to, um, I, I'm going to help you with the remodeling that you're doing in your home. I mean, there's been things like that have come up, and
Wow.
it's that soul's way of still expressing love,
Yes.
individual.
Because love
Usually,
never dies. Yeah.
yeah, usually it's more profound than, like, but than working on your home. But um truly, I mean, there have been messages like that. I just did one of those the other day, and I said, your husband's coming through, and he's talking about, he wants to help you with what you're doing there in the home. And she goes, oh, I have a big repair, coming in. We have flooding, and I have to address that in some way. So here he was, and
Wow.
my not knowing that individual at all, but he was coming through and mentioning it, exactly what was going on.
That is amazing. It really is. And um, what is going on with this great transformation, the great awakening that we're in, that's happening in the world today? that we're currently experiencing, how does it affect us spiritually? Yeah. With, you know, how does that, I mean, this, we were just talking about this, wasn't we? With this great awakening. I believe, you know, people are awakening to their gifts, to the spiritual side. I mean, I know it's an awakening on all levels, but still, this is a mass spiritual awakening, isn't it? That we're going through.
It is, and that is why you're seeing so much fear.
Yeah.
And you know, I think fear really got a foothold during the COVID era.
Yes.
I never succumbed to that. I
No.
did not. Well, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we won't get into that. Yeah.
But you know, this is sort of now an offshoot. Now we're coming into a different state here, of, you know, with this Plutonian shift into the sign of Aquarius.
Yes.
So, and it's also really going to reshape the connection between people. You know, we have the internet,
Yeah.
certainly. You know, Aquarius is a planet, is a sign ruled by Uranus. Uranus rules the internet and electricity. So
Yeah.
you're going to see massive, we've already started seeing this, massive developments in technology.
Mm.
Some of it, you know, it's just like money. Money is neutral.
Mm.
You can use it to hire a hitman.
Yeah.
You can use it to give food to the poor.
That's right. It's just energy. Yeah.
It's neutral. It is energy in a paper or coin or electronic form. So it's the same way that with technology, it's neutral.
Mm.
Um, you know, I am concerned about AI, artificial intelligence. I think that as an author, you know, we have to be aware of that,
Mm.
because there can be, you know, people can steal our work that we've worked very, very hard on.
Yeah.
Um,
But
Same with,
this is why, Carol, I believe that we have to awaken spiritually as well as have this wonderful technology, and also come back to nature and simple ways of living and being, you know, and heal ourselves naturally, which we've been doing for thousands of years without big pharma and all of their toxic, you know, ways of being. We've used energy healing and natural healing for thousands of years, you know, that we've been on this planet. So I believe it, you know, technology, yes, spirituality will come up, and coming back to nature.
yes, yes, you're a lady after my own heart, because I constantly remind people about how healing nature is. And it doesn't have an ego. It doesn't know about past or future. It simply is. And the other part of that, and actually part of nature, are animals. Um,
Yes.
Animals are, in my opinion, they are more highly spiritually evolved than we
Yes,
are,
they're angels.
because they exist always in present time. Yes, they kill other beings to eat. However, that is an instinctual, uh, you know, activity on their behalf. But they really come as healers and teachers. And I've had so many examples of that in my own life, but also working with clients. And
Mm.
there are readings too, Joanne, where animals come through, pets come through.
Yes, the pets come through, because isn't it true, Carol, when we pass over, not only will our loved ones come and our spirit guides, but our dogs and our cats and our animals that we loved.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And sometimes, you know, I'll say there's a, you know, there's a German Shepherd here, and the person will go, "Oh, well, that was my dog when I was a child." And I always remind them there is no time in the spirit world, and that obviously that soul is still there of that dog, you know, and they greet us just like human loved ones. They greet us and they heal us. They help to heal. I've actually seen that,
yeah.
where somebody who maybe a young person who's passed, tragically from an accident or, drug overdose or whatever. And I'll see the dog there, and the person will say, the dog is the family dog who passed over is helping me heal.
Wow. And
So it's
that's what they do in the physical world, they transmute negative energy into joy. They know they can feel your negativity when you're down. They're angels. That is so comforting to know that they're going to be there.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it is. I never, I've had many pets during my life, and and for a long time, I had a very vivid, several vivid dream visitations with one of my dogs that had passed over. And that hasn't happened in many years, but it gave me so much comfort to know that,
Yeah.
that she was there.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. Oh, what a beautiful, it's just so comforting, isn't it? It's so comforting. It really is.
That's
It's
why
so
I do the
comforting
work.
to know that there's no fear. We don't have to fear it. That it's and as I know that when I'm older, I want to help people when they're dying to not have that fear. I think that is, the most important thing, when people get older, to let go of the fear of death, isn't it?
It is, and there are times that I've delivered messages, just being the conduit. It's always coming from spirit. But I've delivered messages to people that, say it's a younger person, a daughter, and it's her dad coming through, and he'll say, "Please tell mom it's beautiful here. There's nothing to fear." In fact, that happened in my own family. My mom has been gone 20 years. But my dad just passed a year and a half ago. And my mom came to me and she said, "Tell dad I have a really lovely place for him here." And I knew the time wasn't right at that time when I got that message. But when I sat with my dad, when it was obvious he was making his transition, I said, "Now's the time." And I told him, I said, "Dad, mom came to me and she said she has a really lovely place for you there." And he said, "Oh, does she?" And his eyes lit up.
Oh,
And I said, "Yeah." And so I believe that that gave him some comfort.
definitely. Wow. It's so emotional, all of it. It's so beautiful, honestly. Wow. And it's just gorgeous. Absolutely. And so many people need to know this, and they really do. And where can people read Wisdom from the Spirit World and all of your books that are so important, Carole?
Thank you. Well, they are on, my publisher is actually in England, where you are. So through the publisher, which is collectiveinc.com, the imprint that my books are under is Sixth, the numeral six with plus th books. Also my website, and you can also schedule a session there, and that's soulvisions.net. And also Amazon. I know that there's an Amazon UK and there's an Amazon in the United States. All of the books are available electronically too on Kindle. Um, and I've done actually many readings with people from other countries.
Can you do them on Zoom?
Yes, that's how we connect. Ireland, Scotland, England. I've also worked with an interpreter from the lovely lady who her husband came through. She was from Iraq
Wow.
and did not speak English, so
Mm,
there was an interpreter, and it was lovely.
wow.
So
Carole,
there's no
honestly,
difference.
yeah, that's right. But your work, Carole, is just honestly, it's such an honor to have you. And I just want to thank you so much for doing all of these years of helping so many people with their grief and letting go of their fear and giving them the comfort from their loved ones is so important. And to know that life goes on. I mean, there is no death, you know, to know that it goes on. So thank you for all your work, and thank you, you know, for all of your books, and thank you for being on a Great Awakening show.
Thank you. My pleasure.